We'll start with a prayer. Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namah Kamarupini Mahabalaya Nagadhipataye Anantaya Namaha. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So thank you, Nitin. Thank you very much for this weekend with wisdom. Janmashtami is approaching in a few weeks' time, and when me and Nitin were discussing a possible topic, I suggested that we do key verses of the Bhagavad Gita. It's a much loved text, but also a much misunderstood text, and there is a lot it has to offer all of us. Madhusudana Saraswati very beautifully presents in the Dhyana Shloka what this Bhagavad Gita is about. It's very, very eloquently stated. Before we go into that, I also want to say that the Gita, or for that matter Vedanta, is a flow of blessing, and we invoke the grace of the entire parampara. We invoke the grace of Bhagavan Krishna as Jagat Guru, and today being Naga Panchami, I also chanted a shloka to invoke the grace of Ananta. So Naga, power, Shakti, Kundalini. I'm not going there, okay? That's only for the initiated. But really a glimpse of Maya Shakti, glorious Maya Shakti. So we invoke the grace of all, so that we are able to listen to what we need to listen to, not necessarily what we want to listen to. Okay? So having said that, the Dhyana Shloka, Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim. Very, very beautiful shloka for contemplation before we actually enter the Bhagavad Gita. Gita meaning song, the song of none other than the Lord. It is Bhagavad Gita, not Krishna Gita. Okay, so Bhagavan Krishna as an avatara, but it is Bhagavad Gita. So this Amba, the Devi, I am invoking your grace. Why? Because you were taught to Partha, the son of Pritha, Kunti, for whom, for the sake of, of course you were taught for Arjuna, but you were taught by whom? By Narayanena, by Bhagavan Narayana himself. And how do we know that? It must have been a conversation, a dialogue once upon a time. how are we concerned with it? Well, it was faithfully collected and reported by Bhagavan Vedavyasa, and it was placed Madhye Mahabharatam. So this entire Mahabharata, 1 lakh verses, okay, right bang in the middle, it is there. And you are in the form of these 18 chapters. 18 chapters, many words, 700 verses, and all really teachings of blessings. But there can be so many verses written about so many topics. What is so special about the Bhagavad Gita? 2 things. One is it is Advaita Amrita. Amrita is a word for nectar. No one has tasted nectar, okay, but we do know that the Devatas and the Asuras, they fought for it, and then there are many stories related to it. Okay, everyone wanted it, and the beauty of it is Amritam, Namritam. So that which even a little of it can give you immortality. Immortality, why? Oh no, because I want to live forever. But actually you are forever. And that is what is Advaita, for you to see that all that is here is you, one which is non-dual without a second. No, but there is the world and there is God and there is, yeah, that's right. But you as consciousness, you are one without a second. So the Bhagavad Gita is Advaita Amrita Varshinim, showering this Amrita. That's why I decided to title this Gita Amritam, okay? And what else about it? It helps me to Bhavad Veshinim. So this world of becoming, or what we refer to as samsara. Samsara, in some of the southern states, they say, oh, my samsara is very well. How is your samsara? My samsara is fine. They actually mean their wife, okay? Colloquially, it has acquired that meaning. But samsara here is this constant being on the treadmill, going nowhere, and thinking you're going somewhere, but actually you're just trying to become more significant, more intelligent, more powerful, so that you're fulfilled. But actually that samsara, that world of becoming goes on and on and on, and there is no complete fulfillment in sight. So what is it that the Bhagavad Gita does? The Bhagavad Gita destroys what? This life of becoming. Oh my God, I don't want my life to be destroyed. No, we are not talking about that. This constant dissatisfaction with everything, that is what it will take away. And across the ages, even Adi Shankara in his Bhaja Govindam, he says, Bhagavad Gita kincha adhita, little bit also if you study, it's like having like a sip of Gangaji. So then you will be deeply blessed. Okay, then what else about it? Well, thankfully, because Gita, you said it is Advaita, but what about the Upanishads? I thought only the Upanishads, the last portion of the Veda, is talking about Advaita. What is the Gita doing? Gita is a part of Itihasa, Mahabharata. So how can you say that? No, we consider it Smriti. And Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha. So the Upanishads are likened to cows. The one who is milking is Krishna, who is Gopala, and Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha. And who is the one who gets the first, we might refer to as colostrum, or the first milk? It is Arjuna. And then who is he? He is the one who is Sudhir Bhokta, Partha Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdha Geetamritam Mahat. So he gets the first milk, and he is the one who has a mind that is very clear. And this Gita Amritam, which is invaluable, which is timeless, which is brilliantly great, that is now available for everyone else. So there are many more verses of the Dhyana Shloka, but this is enough for us to recognize that this is a very sacred pursuit. It is not a pursuit of the Gita, actually. It is a pursuit of the inquiry of who you are. And Gita is for all of humanity. Why? Because the problem is universal. How does the Gita start? So of course Dhritarashtra Uvacha, but we will come to that. The reason it is a universal problem is because the human mind is a dharma kshetra. That's the first word of the Gita. Okay, after Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Why is it dharma kshetra? Why is it a battlefield of dharma? I am very clear about my dharma. Well, you may be clear, but others are not. Or the reason we have conflict is because choices are available. A cow does not have to think, what shall we have for breakfast today? Shall we have chole bhature if you are in the north? Or shall we have idli? Or shall we have oats? No such doubt, no such conflict, because choices are not there. Or should I spend my life with the first bull I meet or the fifth one? So those choices and those conflicts are also not there. But for the human being, even in terms of food, clothing, shelter, artha, dharma, kama, I mean dharma is not quite mentioned there, but artha, kama, so many wants, so many desires, and which one to go with, which one to keep aside, so on and so forth, constant. Which is okay. You say, wow, that's great, that's the glory of a human being, we will colonize Mars also. Very good. Now, along with this choice, what is coming is, I am a self-conscious being. The beauty is I am the self and therefore I am self-conscious. But that's not understood initially. And this self-conscious being is self-judging. So the cow may have some strange, or the bull may have very, different kind of horns. The cow will not have a complex. But if my teeth are buck teeth, or my nose is too small or too long, or height, something, okay, I will be judging myself. It doesn't stop with that. I judge the whole world. So then, of course, the very dogmatic people say, oh yes, we must be non-judgmental. Well, hello, how can you be non-judgmental? Because you have to interact, and so you have to have some working judgment. But the judgments we have about ourselves leads us to want to be different. That it's not okay, maybe I'll have a haircut, I'll feel different. Or maybe I wear something, I feel different. Maybe I move on to someone else, then maybe things will be different. The point is, the human condition is a condition where we are faced with our limitations and it is not acceptable to us. I want to be free from seeking. I want a house so that I have freedom from homelessness. I want a companion because I want freedom from loneliness. I want comfort because I want freedom from discomfort. I want happiness because I want to be free from sorrow. I want excitement because I want to be free from boredom. I want is a constant. What I want is different. And the thing is that even after I get what I want, it's not enough. So this human condition of experiencing our limitation and not being okay with it is at the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. There are 18 chapters and each chapter is called yoga. Okay, so the yoga enthusiast will think, oh, there are 18 yogas in the Bhagavad Gita, please, no. So please pick up little Sanskrit. So yoga, the word also means topic. Surely you don't need to practice Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which is the first chapter. We don't need to practice being sorrowful, the sorrow of Arjuna, we already know it. So the setting of the Gita, of course most of us are familiar with. The Pandavas are in the forest, they have been there for 13 years and then they return. Of course they were tricked in a game of dice. They return to claim what is rightfully theirs. And then they send Bhagavan Krishna to negotiate. He tries to negotiate with our Duryodhana. So please, first, please give them their kingdom. No, nothing doing. Okay, half a kingdom. No, not at all. Okay, 5 villages. No. Okay, at least 1 village with 5 houses. No, Duryodhana. Okay, at least 1 house with 5 rooms. No. So now war is imminent. They have to fight it out. And it's very interesting that before the war, Arjuna and Duryodhana both approach Krishna. Krishna is having a nap. He opens his eyes and he sees that Arjuna is near his feet. Then he looks later, okay, near his head, Duryodhana. Both say, we have come to ask you of something, so we hope you will not refuse. Okay, Duryodhana very enthusiastically wants to say what he wants. He wants to be there first. But Bhagavan Krishna says, no, Arjuna, I saw you first. You go ahead. What do you want? So before he says that, he also says, I'm making my position clear. You have come to ask me something. For the war, I will not fight the war. I'm not going to take up any weapons and I'm not going to fight on either side. But my army is available for whoever wants. So Duryodhana is hoping, okay, Arjuna, you better, you sentimental fool, you better ask for something else. He's thinking. And Krishna says, Arjuna, go ahead, what do you want? So Arjuna says, I only want you by my side. Can you be my Sarathi? Can you be my charioteer? Bhagavan Krishna says yes. And then of course Duryodhana, what do you want? Oh, I definitely want your entire army. They are well trained by you. So that's perfect. So it's very interesting that Arjuna chooses Bhagavan Krishna and he chooses grace. And later on, as we will discover, he learns what it means to be an instrument, nimitta matram, in the context of this symphony of life. He had a role to play on the battlefield and so on. So this Gita Amritam, I'm planning to cover a few verses. We'll see how many we can do. But definitely some key verses I will do so that we get a glimpse of the Gita and enough to want to delve further. Because Vedanta requires commitment. It requires you to not be in a mode of seeking entertainment. See, for entertainment you have a lot of other things, okay? But we see this tendency that people treat a satsang or a class or a course as entertainment. Oh, let's do something different. Yeah, let's listen to the Gita. Hey, hello. This is not entertainment, okay? It's a very serious, committed pursuit. At the same time, it's light because you don't have to do anything. It's the teacher who pretty much shares what is there in the Shastra. So, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yoyotsavaha Mamaka Pandavanikam Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. That's how we start with a bang. The most odd place for any kind of teaching to take place. So here Sanjaya has been gifted this boon that he can see what is happening on the battlefield and report. Dhritarashtra was offered. He said, no, I don't think I can handle it. This I cannot handle it has been the bane of our lives also. We are so afraid that we cannot handle what we will see. No, we procrastinate, we push it aside, and so on and so forth. Anyway, Dharma Kshetre, that is very important to note that Dharma, coming from Dhra, so Dharayate iti Dharma. The entire matrix of universal laws and principles which sustains society, carries it forward. That is the Kshetra. That is our Dharma Kshetra is our mind, and of course we are in a Dharma Kshetra. Why? Because how does one navigate Artha, the pursuit of wealth and security, or for security's sake, the pursuit of pleasure, how much, when not, etc. And of course, if there are some people who are interested in going to Swarga, then what is to be done for that? This is our field of operation. And then throughout the chapter 1, which very beautifully sets the context, we see that Arjuna is an adhikari. Okay, he's the person who's qualified. But a lot of people say things like, oh, Arjuna had anxiety, neurosis. I don't know if you've come across this. If you haven't, you are blessed. People don't understand what it means to be a warrior, which Arjuna was. So he was not afraid of war. He is a Kshatriya. He understood war strategy very well. And he has fought many battles before, killed many people. So he's not like, oh my God, I see blood, I'm afraid. None of that. There is a whole description of all the armies, conches, and Arjuna says, because Krishna is there as his Sarathi, his charioteer, please take me to the middle of the battlefield. And when he is there, Senayor Upayor Madhye, he surveys everyone. And then we see a description of the human condition. It's a topical problem. It's a specific description related to the battlefield, but we can see ourselves in it. Why? Because as the verses go, he says, I am seeing them, but if we get victory also, it is stained by their blood. If I get the kingdom also, what is the point of all this comfort? Because where will all the people be? If we kill everyone, dharma lives in a dharmi. If all the dharmis go away, who is going to preserve dharma? And please note, Arjuna was not a pacifist. Okay, war is very important and it has been across civilizations. So he's not afraid of war one bit. Yet he saw the futility of fighting because he felt stuck. If I win, what's the point of this achievement? My heart is still empty. And if we lose, then again, what's the point of all of this? And we must also note that for 13 years they have really suffered in the forest. So they're all set for war if it had to be so. They were busy preparing. You know, that time when you fight, there are mantras for every arrow that you draw. So they're all missiles, all mantra powered missiles. I'm just using a word like that. Of course, they are better than missiles. So he spells out his condition and he says, I don't want to fight. Especially because these people who are on the opposite side, they are my people. My grandfather, Bhishma, on whose lap I have grown up. My guru, Drona. So, his feet deserve a pada puja. How can I kill them? Because I am a warrior, of course I'll kill. I'm here to kill. Nobody wins, nobody enters a war to let the other win. You enter a war to kill and to fight and to win. So, how do I do this? So he is not able to see that they are on the side of adharma. And dharma is what sustains society. It could be my people, your people, anyone's people. So then there is this description of his condition, and he says this Ashru Purna Kulekshanam, that there are tears in his eyes, but the discipline of a warrior, they don't fall, but overcome by compassion, karuna, and also sorrow. So he says, initially he says, Rishikesh is close by, I will walk away, so I don't mind, I will live a life of bhiksha. It's okay. Bhikshamapi haloke, I will go. Then further, as he is sharing and as Bhagwan Krishna is talking to him, very briefly, we've entered the second chapter, then is a very beautiful shloka which shows the transformation of Arjuna the warrior, who was a buddy to Krishna, transforming into a student, to a shishya. Karpanya doshopahata svabhavaha prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha yatsheyasyat nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadhibam tvam prapannam. So he has a good awareness of his condition, Arjuna, and he says, I am dharma asammudha. So dharma sammudha, I cannot understand what to do. What is my dharma in this given situation? Because they are my people, how can I kill my people? And I feel very faint-hearted. So I feel like a karpanya, like a miser, So I have all these abilities, but I cannot use it. I don't know what to do. And then he says this very beautiful word, Yat Shreyas Syat. You please tell me certainly, Nishchitam Bruhi. What is Shreyas? What is the ultimate good for me? So if you ask people, I have a stomach upset, what is good for me? Some person will say, oh, please have jeera water. Some people will say, no, you starve. Intermittent fasting is the solution to all your problems. So like that, there will be people who will offer some solutions which are relatively good. Here, Arjuna is not saying, oh, what do you think? He doesn't ask Bhagwan Krishna for war strategy. He does not say, please give me a mantra. He doesn't say, I will do asana on the battlefield and I will prime myself. Okay. He says, tell me what is Shreyas. So we can have a doubt. Okay, maybe Bhagwan Krishna will say what is good for him, Like he is one of the prime warriors. Now if your prime warrior says, okay, I'm not going to fight, then what's going to happen? In addition, he says another word, I am your Shishya. Shishya is a very important word. I am Shiksha Yogya. I am worthy of being taught. Which means what? I have some preparation. I have some initial qualification. So please teach me. I surrender to you. Okay. So here is an achiever, an accomplished person, a warrior who has achieved great competence in his life sphere, and he has the objectivity to recognize that I don't know how to navigate this phase. I don't know. And it's not for want of strategy, or that, you know, he got a stomach upset, or he suddenly blanked out. Nothing of that sort. He understood that his condition is a condition of being stuck. He cannot see the way forward, and actually he dipped into the desire for moksha. The desire for moksha, moksha meaning freedom from the sense of bondage. He wanted to be free from this situation. And he thought that if I don't fight, perhaps I'll be free, or I don't know. But you please tell me, you please teach me. And interestingly, Bhagavan Krishna doesn't say shut up. You know, we had so much time, 13 years, okay, you could have asked me any time. Or he did not say, you please listen to me, believe in me, I am telling you fight, you please fight. Krishna did not do any of that. Krishna did not say, okay, I will do Shakti Pat, okay, I will touch your forehead and then you will be, brimming with Shakti. I will help your Kundalini to arise and then you fight. No. It's a straight, honest question, and it deserves a straight, honest answer. So Bhagavan Krishna subsequently, in 17 chapters, he taught Arjuna. Okay, this is very important. Why did he teach Arjuna? Because the problem is one of ignorance. And the thing with ignorance is that the only solution is knowledge. Suppose there is something on the path, okay, it's evening time, it's dusk, I can't see clearly even with my spectacles, and then suppose I'm going and then I see this thing lying there, my God, it's a snake. So I was headed to the temple, you know, in our ashram in Anekatti, dusk time, so evening, a lot of people go to the temple, so quite a distance. I freeze in shock. My God, snake. And suddenly the mind just, moves in with dazzling speed. What's going to happen? I'm going to get bitten and then the hospital is very far away. I don't know what to do. I hope the snake doesn't come towards me, blah, blah, blah. Then friend is coming behind and saying, hey, what are you doing? Let's go. So then seeing my expression only, what happened? Snake. And then the person has a flashlight and says, hey, you idiot, this is a rope. Now suppose, and it's truly a rope, okay? Suppose I had seen the snake. Actually it's a rope only, I saw the snake. This world is of great fear to me. And I have to manage it. Because there is lot of sadness also. How will I manage? Or if some my dear ones get bitten by a snake, what will I do? And so on. I can also say, I'm a researcher. I go back into my room. I'm not going to deal with the snake right now. But I have idea for research. How to cope with fear of snakes, or I will say, oh, psychological framework. Let's apply cognitive behavioral strategy and think of what is rational, what is irrational. I will change my behavior so that I will live in courage related to the snake. Or I might wonder, oh, snake, that means snake would have littered. This might be mother snake. So lot of baby snakes will be around. My goodness, what am I going to do? All this drama, okay, our life drama, can be mitigated if only I realize that, hey, what I thought was snake, what I thought was a cause of fear, what I thought was a cause of sorrow, actually is not. It's just a rope. But this has to be taught. You cannot figure this out on your own. And there are gurus and gurus and gurus who have been students once upon a time, who have been worthy shishyas, who have learnt in the lineage and who continue to pass it on. So this human problem that we have of self non-acceptance, of dealing with limitation, of the world not being enough, okay, even if you are James Bond, the world is not enough for you. So now what to do? And luckily Arjuna, of course, he did self-diagnosis, but he also asked for the treatment. Generally what happens is, we are all very intelligent people, or so we think, and enlightened consumers. So you, let's say you have a stomach upset, you will try certain things, home remedies and all that, okay, but it's not going. You try so many things, it's just constant stomach pain. Then at some point in time you'll have to say, you know what, I tried, I attempted some trial and error methods, but I have to go to an expert. So we also try, we will read self-help books and watch lots of videos, even on this portal, talk to people and so on. But I have not understood really what my problem is. I only know the symptom, which is stomach upset. Then I go to the doctor. Doctor, I have little surrender, little shraddha I have. Why? Because expert. Doctor, what's the problem? So then the person saying, how is your head? What? I said, I have a stomach upset, my head is okay. No, I think you might also have a headache. Why? Because your stomach and gut are related. Oh, is it? Okay, so and then, you know, it takes my pulse, okay, Vaidya, Ayurvedic, traditional Vaidya, and he says, actually you have some other problem, which is a tumor in the body. What? Tumor? Yes, it needs to, we have to do something about it, but don't worry, we have a solution for it. So I thought my symptom was dissatisfaction. I thought my symptom was sadness. I thought my symptom was anger, and I'm trying to manage it all, okay. But no matter what I do to manage it, I do yoga, I use some psychology, pop psychology, and then I also chant mantras, and I go for Tirtha Yatra. I live very dharmika life, but self non-acceptance continues. Then I walk into a Vedanta class. There also my sense of comparison continues. Oh, this person has been there for longer. This person knows this, that, the other. So the problem is not understood. And Bhagavan Krishna starts with a bang. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashocyanan Vashochastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasuna gatasunscha nanushochanti panditaha. So 2.11 is really where the teaching begins. And what does Bhagavan say? He does not say, oh, I totally validate you, Arjuna, I'm really sorry you are feeling so sad. Poor thing, I am there for you. No such validation or acceptance. He shakes up Arjuna. What does he say? This grief you are having, okay, it is not legitimate. You are grieving for that which is ashochya. There is no reason for you to have grief, and yet so far you have spoken words of prajna, words of wisdom, okay. And the people who are truly panditaha, the ones who have panda, okay, the ones who have wisdom, not how we use the word pandit or panditaha, nowadays, okay. Panditaha is the one who is wise. So what about the wise? Well, the people who are panditaha, they do not grieve for, or they don't have sorrow for those who are dead gata soon and agata soon, who are yet to go. The last breath is still to go. They don't have any grief. So now this is very confusing. What do you mean? I thought you will validate me. It's true I have sorrow, but like, what do you mean? You're saying there's no need for me to grieve? You're not understanding me? Arjuna could have said, okay, but he doesn't say all this. He listens very quietly to Bhagavan Krishna, because Krishna goes on explaining why there is no reason for us to have grief. Having said this, he does not say that grief is a negative emotion. This is all modern Western psychology that has crept in, okay, which makes us feel guilty for any emotion we have. But we have to, see Natya Shastra for this. Just by the way, the one who is a Surida, the one who has a sensitive heart, is the one who has the freedom to experience all emotions. Is not partial to one or the other, but each emotion has a glory. Every bhava has a rasa, and it is to be experienced, and we have no problem with it. So, is Bhagavan Krishna giving Arjuna a pep talk? Because some people will say, oh, Gita is all about psychology. No, there is some psychology in it, but there is far deeper and far sophisticated, because the identification with the mind is questioned. So ashochya, that thing that you saw on the path, which you thought was a snake, it is ashochya. Why? There is no reason for you to grieve, because it is not a situation that calls for grief or fear. So the reason I want freedom from sorrow is because I think I am subject to sorrow. The Bhagavad Gita starts with the teaching of saying that there is no reason for you to grieve, and then in 18th chapter the teaching ends with Ma Shuchaha. So do not grieve, okay? And through all these 17 chapters, what is my real nature? What is my connection with the mind? What is the quality of the mind? What is the status of the mind? What is the status of this deha? What is the nature of the world? What is the nature of bondage? What or who is Ishvara? How do I relate to the world? All these questions get answered. What is the purpose of my life? Which is really to have a life of purpose. But that clarity will come only when I have Purushartha Nishchaya. What is it that I really want from life? And then of course, as most of us will say, I want to be happy, right? That's why we can, without hesitation, wish people happy Nagapantami, happy Diwali, happy Dasera, happy New Year, happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy day, whatever it is. Why? Because universally we know that this is what everyone wants. Nobody will say, hey, how dare you wish me happy birthday? Nobody says that, okay? Or if somebody says that, then they need a special place or they need some special treatment, okay? So he has said that there is no reason for grief. Why? But I feel the grief. What do you mean? How can you deny me? I am suffering here and you are saying there's no reason for grief. Like, how could you be so cruel, Bhagwan Krishna? But of course, Bhagwan Krishna is not cruel at all. And he gives us a glimpse of what is the nature of the Atma. Now, this is a thing that we will see in all Vedanta texts and other texts also, which are included in what we might refer to as Shastra. What is that? That the highest teaching is always given first. So one would say, no, there should be a plot and then there should be a lead up and a gradual build up, and then finally Tattvamasi, the grand declaration, the Mahavakya should be there. No, Shastra is very respectful of you, and therefore if you are an Uttama Adhikari, if you are, very well qualified, you have a certain maturity, highest teaching always given first. Then, oh no, teaching is not clear. Oh, no worries. We have lot of more teaching and verses to explain what was the Pratignya statement. So then he starts to unfold very, very beautifully that what you think is you is actually not you. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvananjara. So this, just as you take on different clothes, so too the vasamsi jirnani. So like that, this dehi, the one who has a body, okay, now this is interesting, the one who has a body passes through Kaumaram, childhood, youth and old age. Then what was that? जब मैं छोटा लड़का था, बड़ी शरारत करता था, मेरी चोरी पकड़ी जाती, something, Bajaj, some advertisement, okay, which shows the progression of that person. अब मैं बूढ़ा हूँ, गोली खाकर जीता हूँ, so I survive by consuming medication. But still this product continues, okay, in our house. So the Gita is helping us see out the current experiences that we're having and helping us see, what? You did not transform into another creature. Who is the one that is invariable while everything around you changes? You are the one that went through these different stages, which means that relatively you are invariable and all these stages are variable. So if you are invariable, not subject to change, then the wise people will not grieve about this, because there is no end to you. There was no birth, there is no end. Then later on in the in chapter 3, he gives us a glimpse of Drikdrishya Viveka, which is a very beautiful methodology for us to see what Bhagwan Krishna is saying. So he says that, you may be watching a lot of Zoom meetings, or you are watching greenery, or you are watching your loved ones, different sites, okay? The sites are changing, Drishyam, which is what is seen, is changing, but the Drik, the seer, which is the eyes, they are relatively not changing, correct? So for every different thing that you see, you don't have to wear special eyes. One pair of eyes, thankfully, which are able to see very far away and very up close and personal, relatively non-changing. But then when I go to the ophthalmologist, I am able to say that, all these months of lockdown and so much screen time, So I think my number is increased. I'm trying to read K, L, M, T, I, and the doctor says, no, 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 I think you need more. So he'll put more lens. And he's a very good ophthalmologist, gold medalist, and that's why I go to him. Surely he should know what my eyes need, what kind of spectacles I need. But he doesn't know. He keeps asking me, is this okay? Is this okay? And then depending on my response, he keeps at it. How do I know whether my eyes see clearly or not? I know. Why? Because my eyes are drishyam and my mind is drik, the seer. Because I know I can see, oh, no, this is very dull. No, maybe I need to clean my glasses or whatever it is. Then somebody asks you, so how are you feeling today, or how's this weekend going for you? And you say, oh, it's great. I've managed to do a lot and I'm really excited about a few things that are coming up. And the person says, no, but I think you are a little sad. So you look around, what's wrong with you? I'm telling you I'm excited. Why are you saying I'm sad? But how do I know? How do I know what I'm feeling? Because I am able to see what is happening in my mind, correct? Or I have some memory. Oh, in the ashram, at this time, people would be getting ready to do puja. How do you know? Because I know it is my memory. I know what I remember. So then, it seems like the mind is drishyam. It is something that is an object of my understanding, and there is something there which happens to know what all is happening in my mind. Okay, so all my changing moods and my differing emotions and the many decisions that I have procrastinated, all that is there in the mind, I am aware of it. Oh, maybe there is another mind. No, how can you say that? Because the nature, we have a word for the mind, antakarana. The word itself reveals the depth of understanding. Karana is an instrument, anta is inner. Inner instrument is this whole mind composite. And if it's an instrument, it means that someone has to use it. It cannot operate on its own. Even if somebody is Mr. India, okay, invisible, then you see the spoon is going straight to the person's mouth. Well, but the person has to be there to use a karana, an instrument. And antakarana is mind, we use a word to describe that. So if it is other than me, that means who am I? With respect to the sights, my eyes were the seer. With respect to the eyes, my mind was the seer, as in drik. With respect to the mind, I am the drik as in seer. Drigeva natu drishyate. So never seen, never drishyam. No, maybe there is someone who can see the subject. Never possible. No, maybe there are two subjects. If there was two subjects, there was no way you could know something. Anyway, so the point is that all that I am experiencing, when I go through this little inquiry, what I begin to see, that if I am aware of all these different forms, which include the subtlest form that is available to all of humanity, which is a thought. Okay, a thought is a form. Okay, vrittihi, so vritti pravaha, this flow of thoughts, that is a mind. I am aware of that. With respect to me, what is the nature of that drik? Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam Katham sapurusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam. So very important teaching of the second chapter, which is called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya here is wisdom. Okay, there is another darshana called Sankhya, but that is not what is meant here. So what Bhagwan is teaching Arjuna and obviously us is that the one who knows this being to be Nityam, not subject to death, the one who is Ajam, was never born, so no birthday, okay, Atma has no birthday. So you individual, of course you have, but Atma doesn't have, always around, and Avyayam, not subject to any decline. So whom can this person kill, and whom can he cause to kill also? So that's 2.21. Now one of the things we have to note about the Gita and Vedanta is that there are shifting standpoints. So because this is the highest teaching right at the beginning, so the nature of the Atma is revealed. How to understand this Atma, what should be my lifestyle, there's a lot to be said about it. Okay, we've just begun. And our identities, okay, so generally when we meet each other, say, okay, so what do you do, right? That's generally what we say. We won't say, oh, are you happy? Person will say, what's wrong with you? Suppose you say, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm very happy. Then you think, what's wrong? Actually we have to say, well, what's right with the person? The person is happy with or without a reason, but we cannot accept it. So you are happy, why? Is it love or is it dove or something? Okay, we will ask. Because we think that to be happy requires a reason. And generally people who are happy without a reason, they have a special institution, we think. So now Bhagwan Krishna is addressing two identities we have. One is the identity of a Karta. Karta is the one who is the doer. And the other identity is Bhokta. Bhokta is the one who is the experiencer. Okay, through all my pursuits of Artha, Dharma, Kama, there is a lot of guilt I pick up as living life. Why did I do this? Why did I not do that? I should have reached out, or I should have walked away. Then maybe things would have not been like this. So Arjuna is also obviously thinking, wondering that why do I have to face this situation? That my own people, I have deeply loved, accepted, valued these people, and I enjoy being a warrior, that's not a problem for me, but my greatest skill I use against them. No, how will I live with this guilt? It is Guru Droha. So killing your own Guru, my God, how can you even think? There's in the Shastra there's a lot of description about that. Or how will I live with anyone, with myself? And we all go through that phase where me and my mind are one. Okay, the space of awareness which makes me aware of something is not available to me. Actually, I am that awareness, but the reason I'm saying it's not available is because I am so identified with the mind and the conditions of the mind that what my true nature is clouded. Okay, actually everything is lit up because of the sun. Even the cloud, you say, oh, what? There's no sun today. What? So suppose if you're in the UK, let's say, okay, you come out and of course it's daytime. It's still daytime, okay, it's not 4 or 5, like winter time, and then the clocks change. There's no sun today. What? No. How do you see the clouds? Well, the clouds are also seen in the light of the sun. So for us to be able to see that the guilt that we have, which is the big emotion of a karta, the doer, how will I live with myself, or how can I live with myself with all that I have done, not done in my younger foolish days? How do I live with this, you know? And what is Bhagavan Krishna saying? He's saying, you know what, you're not the karta. You're not the karta. Of course I am the karta. This argument cannot stand in the court of law. Okay, so people, that's where people jump. What do you mean the person is not killed? Of course the person is killed. Under IPC section, this is what the person should get. We're not talking about functional reality at the moment. Okay, we're talking about the absolute reality, which is your very nature, which is the content of the drik, the seer, which is nityam, which not subject to death, and unborn, and that which is limitless. That is what you really are. You happen to have a human body. Okay, it's incidental. If it was intrinsic to you, you would have this body forever. Okay, but we already know in these 3-4 months of lockdown how much the body has changed. And of course modern science tells us that the body is changing dramatically. In fact, every 7 years you have a new model. Okay, you may not model, but you have a new model in the form of this body, changing always. But the pure awareness that you are, which is your nature, is actually limitless. And that's what Bhagavan Krishna is trying to draw Arjuna's attention to, this teaching, that for pure awareness, consciousness, there is no limbs, so therefore no one can kill anyone, and this is all that is there. It is consciousness and it is limitless. So you may be identified with being a bhokta and experiencer, you may be identified with being karta, but that's not your true identity. Why? Because you go to sleep, then all identities are dropped. Whether you're a king, you're a beggar, whatever you are, it is Nidra Devi, my date with Nidra Devi. So no disturbance whatsoever there, no hurt, no guilt, no nothing, just Ananda. Wow, wonderful. So how to understand this? It's not very clear to me. Yes, of course. So we will give you an example. What is that?